Human trafficking. Anyone can be a victim. Real stories, staggering statistics, and extraordinary measures to combat the epidemic. I'm Sarina Fazan, and we are On the Record. Hi everyone, I'm Sarina Fazan. Thank you so much for joining us. We're doing special coverage of human trafficking, certainly a very difficult topic. January is Human Trafficking Month. Joining me though is Laura Henderson, a survivor. I can't even thank you so much for speaking out, sharing your story, because hopefully even if we can help one person, right Lori, then it makes all the difference. So let's begin with your story. Share with us what happened.
As far as how that began, or should I go further back?
Why don't we start with the human trafficking and what you went through actually started out in your 20s, but the history of what led to it started much younger than that.
Yes. So I would say, it would go back as far as, being in the foster care system and just, going from home to home, always feeling, alone and just rejected from a young age. So
how old were you when you went into the foster care system?
About 5 or 6.
Okay.
Yeah, until I was 13, then I was adopted. But within a few years, that family split up, and just a lot of confusion, just a lot of all over the place, never having stability.
But even though that family, and I can imagine, even though the family had split up, the father, you said, was very, very active in your life, a paramedic, in fact.
Yes.
And what happened after that?
So when I was in my 20s, I ended up losing my father to suicide and alcohol. So that's where my pivotal point was into the really dark place. We could go further back, into my childhood, but that was when it really took a turn, when I lost my father. He was my hero, my best friend. I didn't know what to do or how to really go on without him. I never got to a point. It took me 6 years to deal with his death.
Oh my gosh, bless your heart.
So, naturally I was even more vulnerable at this point. I just really lost in this world. No one, literally no one to guide me, to hold my hand. That person was gone. So naturally when someone came along and wanted to show me some affection or just wanted to hold my hand, even for the wrong reasons, I was willing to go wherever with whoever
You needed to go. And that encounter, that first encounter, happened at a gas station.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's so important to note, that this could happen anywhere and at any time. So you're at a gas station.
In broad daylight, daytime.
In Florida?
Yeah. No,
not
in North Carolina.
In North Carolina, okay. So in North Carolina, it's broad daylight at a gas station. Take the story from there. What happened?
Well, I was getting gas, and I took notice of this guy getting gas. And, at the time I was also in the middle of my addiction, so I could easily spot someone that could supply what I needed, while they were easily spotting me to supply what they needed. So at first I was told about this massage business that this guy and his brother had. So I bought into it. They promised me all these things in life, nice things, nice clothes, nice dinners, nice place, all this stuff that no one had ever really given me. I wouldn't have to worry about where I stayed or just nothing. All of my needs would be met, and life would be great. And of course that, lasted for a few months, and things really took a turn. But by then I was so immersed in the drugs and stuff, like I lost, any way of caring.
You were numb.
I was numb.
I can't even imagine. And then this continued for years. How many years would you say? 5 years?
About 5 years.
How in the world did you get out of it?
So one of the main ways I was exploited was online through Backpage, which the year it got shut down was the year I got out.
What is Backpage?
So it was an online site where you could post ads, where women would post ads and men would get on there. They would just go through the different ads. It got shut down the beginning of 2018. I think the government seized it or whatever. And that was almost, I mean, that was the end, but it was literally almost the end. Like when that got shut down, a lot of us were forced to scramble for work. Because I wasn't one to, we weren't sent out to the streets. It was strictly online. It was very strategic in the sense of hiding behind a screen, you know, being, you know, whether it was me or the traffickers, like, we were always switching phones, switching numbers, just covering our tracks.
And you know, this is something you feel like you watch on Law and Order SVU, but this actually does happen. It's real life. So it gets shut down.
Things got really bad. Like the violence got worse, the physical violence got worse, to the point where, and the drug abuse too, as far as depriving me of drugs to kind of manipulate me mentally and physically, because the withdrawals were enough to kind of either keep me down or spark me to work a little harder. Like they just had a very evil, manipulative way of getting you to do stuff.
Things.
And so I just remember that last week, like I'm gonna die. Like this is it. Like the physical violence. I was like, this is it. Like I don't know how I'm gonna get out of this. And somehow
And you felt like you were gonna die because of not only the mental abuse and the drug abuse. You're saying the beatings as well.
Yeah, being, you know, I would be so physically like dope sick. I just couldn't even get off the floor some days, and I would be kicked, you know, in the stomach and just everywhere, just to kind of like show me that that's where I belong. And you know, I got to a point where I accepted, you know, I'd gone so far into this life, like how could I ever get out? Even if I did escape, what would I ever be worth? You
There's
know?
so much to overcome. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much. There's the physical, the mental, everything. So what happened then that catapulted you out of this horrible situation?
I don't know. I had this like moment where it was like fight or flight kind of, and I I reached out to a client that I saw on the regular, and I really don't know still to this day where it came from, but I managed to find the courage to tell this man what was going on, and he came and I stayed the night with him on his couch. He didn't mess with me, and he took me to detox the next day. So that was like the end of, you know, that was my escape.
That's remarkable. You reached out to a client on the Backpage, one of your clients from online.
Yeah, it had already been shut down.
It had been shut down,
yeah.
but you reached out to someone that was a client. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
But something told you in your heart that there was something good inside that person.
Yeah.
And there was.
Right. I look back and I see these men, like they have an addiction and they have something wrong with them as well. I try to see the good in people now. Even maybe then I saw something in him that I didn't realize then. I just thought this was the person that I needed to tell. And, I didn't know why or how, but I did it. And
he got you on the right path.
Yeah.
Then you stayed on his couch, and he got you into a detox center.
And that was the first one. I ended up in 4 treatment centers that year. I still struggled with the substance abuse because I didn't want to deal with the trauma on top of the trauma that I had already been through. I just didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to talk about it. I think it was a good year of sobriety before I started talking about what happened to me. So, but ever since, the doors have just opened to speak out against it. And, the confidence and courage I have today to speak about it is, it's unbelievable. That's a miracle in itself, because even growing up, I wasn't, this outspoken or outgoing. So I know it's my purpose, and that's why I'm so passionate about it today.
Well, we so appreciate it, and we're going to bring in, for the second half of the show, some amazing people in this community that really are doing everything that they can to stop human trafficking. And I'm still trying to wrap my mind around a client. A client is the person that helped you. So it really is a lesson to show you just never know who that person could be in life.
Yeah, and it almost so that particular day, the main guy that was in control left with another girl to go get food. And I guess they figured I was so physically weak, I wasn't going to do anything. And that's when I reached out to him. They got back right before he did. And I was scrambling because you didn't do anything without notifying them first. So they were already it caused red flags to them. They're why did he just show up? And so I had to scramble, and I was already good at putting together stories really quick, because that's what we were trained to do. And so I managed to convince them to let me go, and I left with literally the clothes on my back. I had a backpack, but I couldn't take it, and that was it. I never looked back.
Good for you. Good for you. On that thought, we're going to go to a break, and then we're going to bring in some amazing people that have made a difference in our community. So stay with us.
He's the only person who loves me. He gives me gifts, money, anything I want.
How could someone who treats me better than my own family be so bad?
They make me feel beautiful and confident instead of alone and depressed.
37.6%. That's how many high school students in Hillsborough County schools admit to feeling sad or hopeless. I'm Addison Davis, Hillsborough County Superintendent of Schools.
And I'm Hillsborough County Sheriff Chad Chronister. Feeling down can be a social cue that human traffickers and child predators look for in their young victims. Human trafficking is an issue that is unfortunately very prevalent here in Florida.
Traffickers can be adults or even older teens who target someone much younger, seeking them out on social media or even in stores or in our schools. That's why we're teaming up to get this message out.
We need you to be our first line of defense against human traffickers.
By speaking up, you can help protect your classmates.
What does a human trafficking victim look like?
They avoid authority figures like teachers, principals, and especially law enforcement officers. Students may miss school frequently or appear tired when they're in class.
They often hang out with people who are older and can supply them with drugs, alcohol, or things they can't afford.
There's no stereotypes. Victims can come from low-income or wealthy homes. So it's important to pay attention to a change in any classmate's behavior, even someone you wouldn't suspect.
If you think one of your friends is a victim of human trafficking or that you are being taken advantage of, please know there is help.
Find a teacher you trust. Go to the office. Ask for a member of Student Services team.
You can also call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-373-7888.
Spread the message using the hashtag #ProtectYourPeers.
Together, we're here to keep you safe.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our special coverage. We're talking about human trafficking, certainly a very, very tough topic to talk about, but something that we do need to talk about. Joining me, again, is Laura Henderson, who, as survivor, shared your amazing story. Thank you so much for being here today, Laura. We have Dotti Skipper, who is the founder of HeartDance, Major Nathaly Patterson, who is the Tampa Bay Human Trafficking Task Force. You lead that, and State Representative Jackie Toledo. I can't thank you enough for being here. I'm sorry, it's a really tough topic that I feel like I'm stumbling all over the place as well. So why don't we start? We've heard your story, Laura, which is just, it's amazing to hear you speak, and we're all so proud of you, and to show that you can survive something like this. Dotti, let's start with HeartDance. What is HeartDance? Tell us how you're involved with trying to stop human trafficking.
Yes, HeartDance Foundation is a foundation founded about 14 years ago, and we go into the strip clubs of Tampa Bay and we minister to the women in the clubs. And many of those women, as we have found out through the years, are trafficking victims, certainly women in forced prostitution many times. So we provide resources for them and connect them to great organizations like Created that Laura works with and other organizations, and we just come alongside and help them in any way that we possibly can. So that's a little snippet of what HeartDance, and we provide funding, for certain situations and things along those lines for HeartDance.
And I have many questions on that, but let's go to the Major and then ask you, Major Patterson, why, tell us about the task force first, and also why is it important to monitor these clubs?
We started the task force in 2019 when we were awarded the ECM grant. From that, we had agencies join with us, local, state, and federal agencies, as well as non-governmental organizations or service providers. They assist us when we recover victims with getting the victims the services that are needed. It's important to have a task force because you can bring all of those groups in together to work toward the common goal of eliminating or reducing the number of human trafficking victims and cases that we receive.
And so, and this is 6 regions, correct?
We have the central region of Florida. We have about 8 counties or 7 counties. We have Manatee, Sarasota, Hillsborough, Pinellas, Hernando, Polk, and I think those are the counties that we have. We don't have Hardy right now, but we have those counties that are involved in the task force, as well as about 23 non-governmental organizations and agencies.
So State Representative Jackie Toledo, now how are you involved and why is this issue so important to you?
This issue has been very important to me. I got started in this issue through the Junior League of Tampa, actually. They had a program called Abolish, just to bring awareness like you're doing today, and I really appreciate that. And then a couple years ago, the Speaker Sprouse, appointed me to the Human Trafficking Council, statewide council, under Attorney General Moody. And so I've been hearing from victims and advocates on what legislation we needed, and that's how I've been involved.
So now that we have done the introductions, all of you, please feel free to chime in with any of these questions. But Jackie, let me continue with the legislation. Where does it stand right now, and are there hurdles that you're seeing?
So we passed a very comprehensive bill last year. I mean, there's always work that needs to be done. But last year we created a victim advocate training program under the Attorney General, and that provides training of 25 hours to all victim advocates. What we were seeing was, although well-intentioned, there was some misinformation going out. So we wanted to make sure that the advocates were giving the right information to the victims, and the resources were all given to the victims, and make sure they're up to date, because we want to make sure that the victims have every possible opportunity. As part of the legislation, we also allowed for the expungement of more than one infraction or criminal offense while you're being trafficked. So in the past, you'd have to wait if there was multiple jurisdictions or you had multiple claims. You have to wait until one was expunged. Now you could do it all at the same time, so you can move on with your life. You don't have to wait many years sometimes, and sometimes that gives the opportunity for the trafficker to pull the victim back in. And we took away any costs associated with expungement. Also, the intent of trafficking a minor was part of the bill. So if you had intent, even though it might have been a sting operation, which they sometimes do, it would also be a felony. Because if you traffic a minor, it is a felony. So that was part of the bill. And the bill also allowed for confidentiality like you would a sexual abuse victim or a domestic violence victim. So the information between a victim advocate and the victim is now confidential as well.
And you know, we're sharing numbers on the screen. We have the national hotline number and also the Florida abuse hotline number for people to call if they see anything major. But when Jackie's talking about the expungement, that is really significant.
It is significant for the victim to have a clean record. Sometimes a lot of victims don't feel that they can come forward because while they're being trafficked, there are some things that they have done at the will of the trafficker, and they don't feel that those things can be removed from their records. But through the expungement, it does help them have a clean slate.
Why are we third in the nation? Now, of course, we have heard because, you know, we're a tourist state, so we're transient. Also, there's a lot of migrant workers here, and we have huge events like the Super Bowl, things like that. But why are we third in the nation?
Because of those reasons. When you have the Super Bowl, you have the IndyCar race, any event that you have bring people, and that's going to increase the availability of people wanting the services of the victims that are coming in. So if you have a large-scale event, that brings the traffickers here. So you're going to have an increase in your numbers.
And Dotti, when we talk about numbers and we see these numbers, these could be, it could be anybody. It's you know, I know you have focused on certain clubs, but you've seen it.
I have seen it. I've been in the trenches with anti-trafficking work for over 40 years and have seen a lot in that time. And it has no boundaries. It crosses all boundaries, whether someone could be lured into trafficking or not. From, you know, a high schooler in a prominent, well-to-do high school, you know, down to impoverished areas, it doesn't matter. Everyone, all of our kids in particular, can be very vulnerable to being lured and groomed by a trafficker. And many times it's not a stranger. Many times it's someone, a family member or a trusted family friend who grooms kids over time, and then they're forced or frauded or coerced into doing these things.
Well, Laura, she shared her story. I mean, it happened at a gas station in broad daylight. As you sit here and you hear these amazing women share on what they're trying to do to stop human trafficking, how is this making you feel at this point?
Just, I mean, it empowers me even more. You know, I've been working for the last year on getting my record expunged as a result of being trafficked. So it's just very empowering, and it just motivates me and drives me more to even just be able to walk alongside these ladies that have been in this fight for years and years. It's an honor for me, you know, to stand alongside them, and I know they feel the same, but I'm just grateful I get to go back out there and do the same thing that someone did for me.
And you know, we're so proud of you, and I can see how strong you are, but what does it take, ladies, for people to get to Laura's place? I mean, is she in the minority? And I hate to say that, right? I hate to say this, but it's such a serious issue. Like, I'll let you answer. Major, I'll start with you.
As far as victims being recovered, it takes a lot. Victims have to identify as a victim. And sometimes when they're seeking services, they may start out and they may go a month or 2 months and then they back out of it and they go back to the life that they were in previously. Sometimes you'll do it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times before you finally figure, okay, I am ready to get out. I need help. So sometimes it takes a while. The help is out there, the victims have to access it, and then we have to work with the victims, getting them the services, getting them through the court process, getting them through the trials. That takes a lot of work. They need that support. They need to know that you're going to stand with them through the entire process. You're not going to just arrest the trafficker and say, now you're on your own, you need to stand by yourself and testify. They have to have the services. They have to have the people willing to work with them and help with them and walk through it with them. And then even after the court process is over, you still have to be there for that victim to help them get to where they need to be. So it takes a lot of work. It takes everybody working together. So a person may identify and start, but it may back out, but you have to just keep trying and pushing them and encouraging them to work through it.
Jackie, you know, I love this show because it is unedited, it's unscripted, and it's a very open conversation. Why do you think you were appointed to head this?
I think because of my passion on this issue. I have children, I'm a mother, so I think that, you know, this is something that's impacting all of our lives, whether you know it or not. When I first was aware of this topic, I thought, where is this happening? And it's in our backyards. So we have to bring awareness in order to eradicate this.
And how do you guys think, honestly, when I've interviewed some other guests, you know, for this special coverage, how do we spot it though? I mean, how can we keep our eyes open? Because Dotti, when you were talking about it could be anybody, what are some things we should be looking for?
Well, first I like to define human trafficking as the business of the exploitation of vulnerabilities. So it's those vulnerabilities that a person might have that they might feel lacking in something. Maybe it's a young girl who's had a fight with her parents and she doesn't feel valued and loved. And it could be something that's not small, but seemingly like, why would that be, you know, a sign to look for? But certainly any kind of vulnerability is what, you know, a trafficker will seize that opportunity to start the lies, the charm, the deceit in luring that person into their world and gaining that trust. And then once they have that trust, then, okay, well, I've done this for you, so this is what you have to do for me. So it's kind of, you know, there's many signs to look for, but it's the bottom line. I think it is the business of the exploitation of vulnerabilities that a person has.
So if you see someone who may need help, or as you said, you know, even a child who may have an argument with their parents or vulnerable, just keep your eyes open. With trafficking, Major, I've heard some statistics that have said once someone is trafficked, it's 4 to 5 years before it could even be detected. Now, I'm not sure, that statistic was a while ago, and so do you have any recent numbers?
I don't have any recent numbers on how long it takes for a victim to come out of being trafficked or how long it takes for them to actually stay in that life. The statistics that I've had that we've recovered from January of 2021 to September, we've investigated over 118 investigations of human trafficking cases the task force has. We have recovered 70 victims and we've made 88 arrests.
Wow.
During that time period. Victims, I think it's the victim's decision on how long they're going to be in that life and how long they're going to come out, because they have to have the desire and they have to identify and know that they need the services and to get out. So maybe somebody's been in for a year, maybe somebody's been in for 15 years. So I can't really say specifically how long.
But you would, all of you would say, and Laura's proof right here, that there is hope, and
Yes.
it's thanks to everything, you know, all that's available.
Yes.
So what can we do to help? What can the public do to help?
I feel like the public, when you're out there, if you see something suspicious, there are so many avenues that you can take to notify. You have Polaris, you have the human trafficking hotline, you have your local police agencies. All of those can be contacts for you. You don't have to give your name, you don't have to give your number, but you can tell what you've seen, where you've seen it, and you can give that information and it can be followed up. Even if you go to an NGO or service provider, your church, make contact with somebody, tell someone what you have seen so that it can be disseminated to the authorities to look at that and follow up on a tip. It's a tip. The tips are what help us.
I think bringing awareness to the young people as well, because when I first asked my daughter, who's 16, what she thought what human trafficking was, or I told her I'm afraid of human trafficking, she said, I'm not going to get kidnapped, Mom. I know better. And I'm like, that's the problem. It's not just kidnapping what you see on TV. Sometimes it's grooming, like you said. You know, sometimes it's someone you trust saying, hey, you know, come over here, we're gonna do this, make a couple $100s, and then you get lured in, afraid, or you're embarrassed, you don't want to tell anyone that you did those things, and then that's when the extortion happens, or when they start to say, if you tell someone, then I'm gonna do these things. And you're right, it could be years before they get out of it and realize they've been victimized, because maybe at first it was consensual. And then they want to get out. And it's hard to do. From what I hear from so many victims, you know, Laura's one of the stories that I heard was which is very compelling. And I'm glad that she's here, because it takes a lot of courage to speak up. And that's what we want, is for people to have that courage to say, that happened to me, I'm going to share my story, and I'm going to save someone else.
And Jackie, I'm so glad that you brought up the point with your teenage daughter who's 16, because I have a 14-year-old as well, and their first image is like, okay, I'm going to the mall, I'm not going to get kidnapped, but I think that's exactly what they do think. So thank you for bringing up that point, because I think that is something too that we need to share with our young girls and young boys now. You know, one guest told me that they thought, and Major, you might have a better number on this, but said that 30% of victims at this point could be boys.
The percentage of boys being trafficked has increased. I don't have that number, but it has increased from what it was 10 years ago. It's increased from what it was 5 years ago. And as the representative was saying, that you can be groomed by someone that you know, and you have those elements of force, fraud, and coercion. Those are the elements of human trafficking, and that's what traffickers do. They prey on victims, they prey on males, they prey on females. Boys are less likely to report that they are victims because you have that stigmatism there. Men are supposed to, and boys are supposed to be open to sexual activity, and they're not gonna go out and report, for the most part, hey, I'm a victim of human trafficking. So the statistics may be 33%, but I can't actually say that that is what it is, but I know that they have increased.
Absolutely, and it's harder for men sometimes. And I'm sorry, Dotti,
No,
yes.
You brought up the mall, and that's one thing that we tell parents, you know, to keep an eye on your kids when they go to the mall, because there was a case many years ago where a group of middle school girls met at the mall. One of the girls that had a fight with her mom, and in the mall, there could be what are called Romeo pimps, just these handsome young guys, you know, just looking around to see vulnerabilities. He spotted this vulnerability in just the way she carried herself. He figured out how to meet her. He started walking in front of the group. He dropped something and bent down to pick it up in front of her, so she tripped over him and fell. And he said, oh, I'm so sorry, let me help you. You want to go get a Coke at Johnny Rockets? Let's, you know, that's the least I can do. So they went, they built a relationship, they became girlfriend, boyfriend, and he said, if you love me, you'll go do this for me. So it could be seemingly that simple, that process, how they can they pick out a target and lure them in over time. So you brought up the mall, so that spurred a memory in me.
Thank you so much for sharing that story, because these are the type of stories that honestly people relate to. And for us, I feel even as difficult as it is to talk about, and it's an issue that needs to be talked about. And Laura, thank you so much for sharing your story, for being so brave and sharing your story, because I told Laura at the very beginning of the show, even if one person is helped through this special, it's worth it if we can save just one person.
Absolutely.
Before we close out, is there anything that any of you would like to add?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Just, you know, talking about the signs and stuff. And I wanted to throw in like ways to get involved. You know, do your research through your local government or the different agencies in your area and find out what they're doing and what ways you can get involved, whether it's going out into the clubs or the streets or even just putting a gift bag together, an outreach bag together. There's so many ways to get involved and there's so much to learn. So just if you feel like that's not your fight, like just learn more about it, and you never know what you're capable of doing as far as giving back. And that's why I do what I do. That's why I speak out, like, because I want to encourage others, not just other victims or survivors, but just everybody. Like, we all have a part to play, and so I just encourage that. So.
Well, your smile says it all, honestly. Your smile and your spirit. And Jackie, would you encourage people to reach out to you so you can push this legislation?
Absolutely. I was just going to mention that if you're a victim and there are legal hurdles that you need to fix, I can fix those or try to fix them for them. And also just know that there are resources and there are people that care. And it's confidential. We'll never have to say your name, but we want to help you. There's always going to be help out there for victims. And if you're a trafficker, we're going after you. We will not tolerate it here in the state of Florida. We are closed for business for human trafficking. And I'm going to be filing a bill too this year to address the hourly motels and vacation rentals. And we're going to be banning them, hopefully banning them. I'm going to pass a bill.
Well, I think that's a whole other show, don't you think, Dotti?
I think so too, along with the massage industry.
Yes.
Well, that's another show.
Yes, we need to do a whole other show on that. Go on the record about that.
Yeah.
You were going to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say if a young person, find out one trusted adult that you can confide in, someone who would have no judgment of you. So find that trusted adult. And if you see something, say something. It's that slogan, but it's so true. If you see something, say something. Have the courage and the boldness to follow through and report it. If you're wrong, you're wrong. But if you're right, you could be saving a life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Major, I have to say, you know, I'm a huge, huge fan of Chief Anthony Holloway, and he said he couldn't be here. He's in Boston, but of course you are the perfect person to be here since you lead this task force, and so it's so nice to have a representative of the St. Pete Police Department here with us. I know it is for the Tampa Bay region, you know, for our region, but you do work for the St. Petersburg Police Department, and I wanted to give a shout out to Chief Anthony Holloway.
I do, and if it were not for Chief Holloway, we would not have our human trafficking unit. We have actually 8 detectives dedicated to human trafficking at the police department. And lastly, I agree with Dotti, and I know it's the saying that everybody says, but if you see something, say something, call the hotline, call your local agency, but report anything that you feel is suspicious, because you have no idea what that person is going through. And if it is, like Dotti said, a good call, it's a good call, and you may be saving a life. So if you see something, say something. And thank you for hosting the panel.
I know, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us. I appreciate you all so much. You can share this show. We would really appreciate it, because we do need to get the word out. I'm on multiple platforms, and of course we'll do more shows like this, right, on the record as issues come up. But thank you so much again, and thank you to my panel for being here.
Thank you, Sarina.
Thank you.